everyone, it's Kute here. I'm driving through the streets on a rainy day in Los Angeles, California, and I thought I would take you on a drive with me. And I love the city. I've traveled all over the world, but I love LA. I love the city. I love nature, but I love the city. And it's often become fashionable for people to think spirituality is some far out thing that is found in the Himalayas or in a yoga studio or somewhere removed from life, but or in an ashram somewhere in the mountains or the jungle. But I'm a real believer that real spirituality must be lived and must be found in the heart of all of this, all of the wildness and the craziness and the mess and the joy and just the intensity of life, that we must really seek to cultivate and find our freedom in the midst of this. That real freedom is not separate from life. That ultimately the real spiritual practice isn't simply doing yoga somewhere removed from life or meditating in a room somewhere, but the real spiritual practice that we must cultivate and find is life itself. So I'm saying that life itself is the ultimate spiritual practice. Life itself is the ultimate yoga. Life itself is the ultimate meditation, where in the midst of all of this and the traffic and cars and crazy people and just life, that we get to observe ourselves, we get to breathe, we get to open our hearts, we get to be loving. So I'm just, I guess, sharing this message to have you embrace life and cultivate a relationship with life, to make life your spiritual practice, moment to moment to moment, to live with that moment to moment awareness each day. It's easy to be free in a little room somewhere where no one's there. So with that said, I really want to encourage you to, rather than trying to maybe get away from life or go on a vacation, go to the Himalayas, go to a yoga studio somewhere, or go into a small room and find peace kind of removed from life, I want you to basically take life on as your guru, as your teacher, as your seminar, as your ashram, as your spiritual practice. When people say, what do you practice? You can say life. And each moment, do it as a meditation. Do each moment, do every activity, whether it's breathing, whether it's changing the diapers, whether it's navigating traffic, whether it's making love, whether it's cooking, whether it's cleaning, whatever it is. I just want you to encourage to have that shift, to make that shift in your internal awareness, to embrace everything with total awareness and take it on as a spiritual practice, as a meditation. And I believe that's how you'll be able to find more freedom in the midst of all of this. So, in the West, there's a gravity in the West. It's like we're living in the matrix, and there's a matrix of cultural conditioning where, whenever I travel and I come back to LA, and I'm sure wherever you live, you can feel the matrix, and I call it the gravity of cultural conditioning. The moment the plane touches down, the closer you arrive into the Western Hemisphere, you can feel that gravity. And it's the gravity of all the thought forms and the belief systems and the conditioning and the programming that the collective consciousness believes and engages in. And it's intense, it's the media and magazines and advertising, and we're constantly in the West in this matrix being bombarded, and that gravity starts pushing us into a certain shape. There is a whole mediaification that puts us in if we're not aware, it's a real practice to stay aware, that if we're not aware, puts us in a coma of unconsciousness. That if we're not careful, just by being in the atmosphere, through osmosis. You know, we're constantly bombarded with magazines and billboards and be this way and be that way and don't be this way, and you know, use this iPhone and get on, you know, social network and go here and use this, you know, drink this beer. And we're constantly being bombarded with messages as to who we should be, what we should believe, where we should go. And we're constantly being sold a lie in this matrix that who you are is not enough. Who you are is not enough, and it's a lie. But because of the osmosis, because of the hypnosis, it's so seductive that we see it everywhere. It's almost as though in the Western Hemisphere, the media has a investment in you forgetting who you are. The media has an investment to completely bombard you and ultimately disconnect you from who you truly are, because the more disconnected we get from our true self, the more disconnected we get from our authentic beingness, the more disconnected we get from the source of who we are, the source of who we are, which is freedom itself, which is bliss itself, which is fulfillment itself. The more disconnected we get from who we are because we're constantly being bombarded, in that moment, then we can be sold. Then we can be sold a whole bill of goods that ultimately will never really satisfy us. So I remember one time years ago, I was in Las Vegas, went to an amazing Cirque du Soleil show, and it was incredible, you know. I woke up in the morning, really inspired, and I went downstairs in this, you know, one of the big main hotels, and it was just amazing. The gravity, the matrix just pressing down. You could feel people and advertising, and there was music blaring. 8 a.m. in the morning, slot machines going and clanking and people talking and 14 televisions blaring. And in that moment, literally, I thought to myself, oh my God, I can barely hear myself. I can barely hear myself think and talk. So in the West, if we are to stay free, we must be constantly vigilant and aware, and constantly vigilant and aware to really stay connected to who we truly are. So the question that I want to ask and remind you is, who are you really? Who are you really? That the real freedom is not to be found outside. The real freedom will never be found out there in things in the world. And the challenge is, as we're in the West, we're constantly being bombarded with images that the solution, the answer to what we're seeking, the source of our happiness, the source of our bliss is out here in the world. It's out here, you know. And if we're not careful, I say life is kind of like a big shopping mall where we're constantly being sold. Will you be one of the many that are sold a bunch of lies and believe those lies until that becomes more real than the reality of who you really are, which is unchanging? Or will you be one of the few that choose to wake up from the Coca-Cola, that choose to wake up from unconsciousness and stay free in the midst of this, stay free in the midst of the gravity and the matrix of the West? Ultimately, the real freedom is inside. So we're constantly being sold that the freedom is out there, and if we're not careful, you know, it's so seductive. It's just in a twinkling of an eye we start seeking out here in terms of relationships and money and food and sex and shopping, and you know, we're constantly seeking outside. We're conditioned to seek outside. That we must remember that the real source of fulfillment can never be really found in things outside that are impermanent. In the impermanent, changing, constantly changing world, that there is a source of fulfillment that is within. There is a source of power that is inside each and every one of you, that is unchanging, that is not born, is not died, is unconditioned, is free. You are freedom itself. And the more you reconnect with the source of freedom of who you already are, that we may have been conditioned to forget, the more you reconnect with that source of freedom of who you already are and claim that, the freer you'll become, the more powerful you'll become, the more full of self-expression and true confidence you'll access. And as a result, I believe that you'll actually be able to enter the world itself. You'll be able to enter the matrix itself, and not only be in the matrix, but be free in the matrix, because your freedom, your confidence and power will not be dependent on anything out here. It will be true independence, and independence that's inside. So it's been a nice chatting with you guys today. So wherever you are, just remember that who you really are is freedom. Who you really are ultimately is everything. You are everything. And when you just reconnect to that, you find everything, and everything is revealed. So until then, love you lots, love now.